The debate, as far as I can tell, is just all around the rights and desires of adults. The fact that what surrogacy...
privileged adults,
yes,
it seems to me.
Yes, and not coincidentally,
because
I
going
would say,
to your
yes.
issue of consent, presumably many surrogate mothers are doing it because they're in very necessitous and difficult circumstances, and they do it for financial reasons. Bearing someone else's child with the difficulties of pregnancy, the challenges of childbirth, the emotional pain, there must be emotional pain, of having grown another human being in your own body and then parting with it. That doesn't sound very much like a commitment to freedom to me.
Yeah, so a lot of, I mean, the radical feminist objection to surrogacy is that it involves the instrumentalization of women's bodies, that it involves exploitation. There clearly are lots of examples of terrible exploitation, particularly if you're talking about, Indian baby farms or the sort of horrors that we've seen happening in parts of the global south. That's true, I agree with all of that. I would add, though, I think there is an additional objection to even altruistic surrogacy arrangements where there's no money involved, in that it necessarily involves separating mothers and newborns. That's the point, And yes, we do this when it comes to, say, adoption. We recognise that there are instances where babies have to be removed from their mothers, and that is a tragedy, and that it's done only in the interests of the child and is closely supervised by social services and so on. We recognise that that's a position of last resort. And actually, in recent years, social services have been moving away from adoption as much as possible and try and use it only in the very most extreme cases. What surrogacy does is it sets out to engineer that outcome deliberately, and not for the sake of the child. It's not done in the child's best interest. It's done because the commissioning parents, who, as you say, are often very privileged, want to have a child that's, like a bespoke genetic child all of their own. That's the goal. And I think if we know that newborns suffer stress when they're taken away from the women who've given birth to them. Newborns come into the world knowing nothing except the smell of their mothers, the sound of their mothers' voices. That their instincts when they're born are entirely orientated towards the woman who's just given birth to them. A newborn doesn't know that this woman doesn't have a genetic connection or whatever. And similarly, the instinctive responses of women. My friend Mary Harrington, who also writes for UnHerd, the phrase that she uses, which I think is so good, is pregnancy doesn't just create a child, it creates a mother. All of those sort of hormonal experiences of pregnancy are geared towards making a woman entirely devoted to her baby and orientated towards the enormous amount of care that a baby needs. I calculated when my son was born that I was spending 40 hours a week in the first months of his life just breastfeeding. I was doing a full-time job just breastfeeding, let alone all the other stuff, it's an incredibly demanding role. And natural selection has blessed us with the ability to perform that role because we are primed to do it by the experience of pregnancy and birth. And what surrogacy does is it deliberately severs the connection between newborn and mother and interrupts that natural process of love and bonding.